Hey there, amazing people. Mark Pomeroy here, welcoming you to this week's Elevate Church online experience. Absolutely fantastic to have you joining us, especially those of you joining us for the first time. We actually publish and host an online experience every single week, which is available live on a Sunday here in Perth and then on demand from then on. And so if you want to make sure you don't miss out, then absolutely subscribe to this YouTube channel if that's the platform you are joining us on, and like and click the notification bell, all the cool things just to ensure that you get reminded that we're back with something fresh and something inspirational and something hope-filled every single week. Now, speaking of hope-filled, we love to take the opportunity to worship together. And from all over the world, wherever you're joining us from, and whatever setting you're in, you know, your living room, maybe not in public transport, sing in your head, you can worship the same God. We can worship the same God together. And this week, our worship partner is Jonathan Traylor. 2 songs, fantastic songs. The words will be on the screen, so you can follow along there as well. And let's really allow God's Spirit to inspire us and lift us up as we worship Him. Woo!
I do not know what tomorrow will bring, but I know you are with me. Forsake me. In all my days, you never left my side. Cloud by day, fire by night. I'll follow you all of my life. I'll follow you all of my life. I'm so glad you are for me. I've been in the fire, but you brought me out. No, you never forsake me. In all my days, you never left my side. Cloud by day, fire by night. I'll follow you all of my life. I'll follow you all of my life. Yeah. Every step I take, you've already been there. And every move I make, you've seen it before. Can you hear the Father calling? There's a seat just for you. And at this table, all is forgiven. Trading your chains of bondage for crowns of freedom. All are welcome at the table. There is a place just for you. No condemnation at the table. There is a place just for you, just for you. Oh, this is the table of new beginnings. These cups are full of love, and it's never ending. And at this table, there are no orphans, just a loving Father and His sons and daughters. All are welcome at the table. There is a place just for you. No condemnation at the table. There is a place just for you. All are welcome at the table. There is a place just for you. No condemnation at the table. There is a place just for you, just for you. Yeah. There's a seat for you. This is the start of your new life. Woo! Leave your chains at the door. They can't hold you anymore. And hold your head up high. This is the start of your new life. All are welcome at the table. There is a place just for you. No condemnation at the table. There is a place just for you, just for you.
Well, hey there, Elevate friends and family. Great to have you with us today. Now, at the time that we are going live with this week's online experience, it's 1 week until Easter. And so last week, we launched a mini-series, which we're called The Bad Boys of Easter. And we're looking at two individuals who were, well, infamous, I think is the correct word to describe them, and very much instrumental in ensuring that Jesus ultimately was sentenced to death on a cross. And we're not taking this mini-series as an opportunity just to learn some history, although we will learn some history. Really, it's about looking at and opening our hearts up to what are the lessons we might learn from these bad boys to ensure that we don't go down the same road ourselves, and really instead to better prepare and better open our hearts to understanding more about what it meant for Jesus to offer himself as a living sacrifice for us. Now, last week, the bad boy was Joseph Caiaphas. Now, Joseph Caiaphas was the high priest in Jerusalem, the most powerful Jewish religious leader in Jerusalem at the time. And really the big mistake that he made is he tried to protect everything that he and his family had worked so hard to achieve. And yet, 2,000 years later, Joseph Caiaphas, who tried to hold on to and protect everything, really is now a footnote in the pages of history compared to Jesus, the Christ, who rather than try to protect everything, instead gave everything away, gave himself away as a sacrifice for humanity. And to this day, the one who gave everything away is the one we remember, the one that 1/3 of the population today profess to have faith in as their Lord and Savior. So today we're just landing this mini-series, and let me ask a question. Have you ever, and I want you to be honest, have you ever bargained with God, like sat with him at the negotiating table and kind of said to God, like, if you will, then I will. And I understand this dynamic when it comes to some big deals, like you have a loved one who maybe has a very serious illness, and you're saying to God, look, if you will heal them, then I will devote all of my remaining days to serving you. I understand that. Why wouldn't you go all in on trying to bargain with that sort of thing? But there's a whole lot of other stuff that maybe we couldn't explain away so easily. Like, God, if you just help me pass this exam that I didn't study for, then I will turn up in church every Sunday for the rest of my life. If you get that girl interested in me, then I'm going to join a team in my local church. And the list goes on. But this list has a dark side, because this list places our expectations on God for things that he maybe didn't ever promise or commit to delivering. And I've seen people who walk away from the table disappointed. Maybe their faith has been diminished. I've even seen people walk away from the table and never come back and say, look, God's obviously either not willing or not able to help me, but it's helped me get what I want from him. And that's not necessarily the proposition that Easter reminds us about. So today we're looking at a pretty well-known character in the Easter story. Today's bad boy of Easter is a man named Judas. Judas of Kyrios, or we just kind of call him Judas Iscariot these days. And this idea of bargaining with God is very much the bottom line of where Judas tripped up in his journey with Jesus. You see, because Judas And to a large extent, the other 11 of Jesus' handpicked disciples, they had expectations, and they kind of saw Jesus as a means to achieving and fulfilling their expectations. But, Judas, well, he had it at another level, but they all had it to some extent. And the reason we're teaching this is I think there's a little bit of Judas in all of us. So we see this kind of come out where Jesus was approached by a rich young ruler and asked, he said to, the rich young ruler said to Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus said, well, you must fulfill and obey all the commandments. And the rich young ruler said, yeah, well, I've done all that, which is not true because it would have been impossible. But Jesus is like, okay, well, there's one more thing. I want you to sell everything you have and give it the money to the poor. And the story goes that the rich young ruler literally said, no thanks, and walked away from Jesus, and that was it. And incidentally, this wasn't Jesus teaching everyone that we all have to sell everything and give it away, but in this particular instance, he was saying that people who have a lot of stuff have a lot to lose. And not everyone who has a lot of stuff is willing to put Jesus ahead of their stuff. Now, as this rich young ruler walks away, Peter, who was kind of the spokesperson for the 12 disciples, he said what they were probably all thinking. Peter said, like, Jesus, we've left everything to follow you. What will there be for us? So here we have Peter saying the quiet part out loud. And this is still something that I hear as a church leader over and over and over again. What's in it for me? Okay. Well, take you back a few thousand years before this time, the Jewish people had been holding on to God's promise of a Messiah, a Savior, that God was going to send them somebody. That person was going to become the king of the Jews. He was going to overthrow the government. He was going to restore Israel to its glory days of David and Solomon. And throughout the run-up to this time, thousands of years, God had spoken through several prophets, spokespeople, and said, this is what the Messiah is going to look like. This is where they're going to be born. This is how they're going to be born. This is some of what they're going to do. These are the things to look for. And when you see somebody ticking these boxes, it's a pretty sure indicator that that's the Messiah that you've been waiting patiently for. And so now, right in this point of history, when Jesus came, he started ticking a lot of the boxes. And these 12 disciples, they had a front row seat to this. And they're like, yep, he's doing that. He was born here. He was born this way. He was doing these miracles. He's fulfilling this prophecy. Wow, we think he's the one that we've been waiting for. Great. Only problem is it looked like Jesus didn't tick all of the boxes. In fact, there were a few problems, and Judas in particular seemed to be the one that noticed these problems more than the other 11 disciples. So for one thing, and now in this history, part of what the Jewish people were hoping and expecting that the Messiah would do would be to throw out the Romans. That was a relatively new problem. They'd been delivered from slavery in Egypt. They were now living in the promised land, but the Romans had come and occupied them. And to an extent, they were sort of living in a captive setting once again. So they had a very, very urgent, maybe even desperate kind of desire to get out from under the Romans that would require this new king, this savior, this Messiah to overthrow the Romans. Problem was, Jesus didn't seem to hate the Romans, which technically would have been a prerequisite to wanting to get rid of them. Secondly, Jesus was like in an open gunfight with the Jewish religious leaders. And his disciples, they would have known, or certainly would have thought that, hey, Jesus, we need them on our side because we need the temple if we're going to restore Jerusalem and the Jewish nation to its glory days. We're going to need the temple. We're going to need the income. We're going to need the power and the influence of the Jewish religious leaders. And you keep dunking on them. That's not helpful, Jesus. And then thirdly, if you're going to kind of overthrow a regime, you need a war chest. And this seemed to bother Judas, who incidentally was the treasurer, because Jesus kept on giving money away. And Judas could not get his head around that and seemingly began to lose patience. So let's pick up the recorded slice of history from the lens of Matthew right here. If you've got your smartphone, open the camera or the scanner, scan this flow code. It's going to take you to Matthew chapter 26. And I'm going to drop us into a slice of history that literally in this, where we drop into, was like the final straw for Judas. Like it tipped him over the edge. So what we're going to drop into is a slice of history that took place in a suburb of Jerusalem called Bethany. And it's just a small suburb, nothing of any consequence there. And it was about 2 kilometers from Jerusalem, from the city center. And just, by the way, hold that fact in mind, 2 kilometers from Jerusalem. That's going to matter in a moment. So Matthew records, while Jesus was in Bethany in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on Jesus' head as he was reclining at the table. Now, very expensive perfume. Well, how expensive is expensive? Well, elsewhere it's recorded that this one jar would have been worth the equivalent of 1 year's wages. Now, here in Australia right now, the average wage is about $100,000. So here we have a woman crack open a jar of perfume, and they didn't have twist tops back then. You cracked it and then you had to use it all. Crack open a jar of perfume worth $100,000 and pour that all over Jesus' head. Now you might be, oh, that's shocking. Like, how wasteful. Okay, well, what's the number that you'd be happy with? $50,000, $10,000, $2,000, $100? Yeah, okay, I can see $100. Yeah, but anything beyond that just seems a bit reckless and a bit wasteful. Well, if you thought that, you're not the only ones, because when the disciples saw this, they were indignant. Why this waste? They asked. This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor. Well, seems reasonable. But aware of this, Jesus said to them, why are you bothering this woman? Meaning, like, it's her perfume. She could crack 5 jars of perfume and it's hers to do whatever she wants. She's done a beautiful thing to me, incidentally. In the poor you'll always have with you, but you'll not always have me. And when she poured this perfume on my body, and this is where the topic shifted dramatically, she did it to prepare me for burial. And it's like, burial? Very, very likely the 12 disciples are looking at each other. Burial, messiahs don't die. Kings don't die. You can't die. You've been sent by God, we're sure of it, to deliver the nation of Israel from our Roman oppressors. Kings, messiahs, saviors don't die. And then I wonder if they're all also asking themselves, well, hang on, we've gone all in to follow you. So if you do die, what's going to happen to us? Well, then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, what are you willing to give me if I deliver Jesus to you? Because he would have been aware that Jesus was on the wanted list, and we talked about that last week. And so, in this point in history, we've got the high priest Caiaphas walking around town with the t-shirt, "It's my life." And now we've got Judas walking around with the t-shirt, "What's in it for me? What's in it for me?" And we now take seats at what becomes known as the Last Supper. And at this point in time, only Jesus would have known it was the Last Supper, although we're about to find out Judas might have had a hope that it was the Last Supper. So they're in this house, and Jesus was wanted by the Jewish leaders. There's two problems about the Jewish leaders trying to get rid of Jesus, and the first one we talked about last week, and that was the fact that Jewish religious leaders weren't permitted under Roman law to execute anybody. They found a workaround for that. Secondly, the problem was the crowds. How and when and where could the Jewish leaders kind of take Jesus away without there being like a revolt from the hundreds or even thousands of people gathered? And so now, when Judas came to them saying, like, I can probably get him to you, the Jewish leaders, they saw that this insider, because he was an insider, would potentially be able to solve the problem. So they counted out 30 pieces of silver and handed that to Judas as payment, like a bounty reward. Now, even though those of you that know the story, and even though we're kind of positioning Judas as a bad boy of Easter, right at this point in history, he's a guy that Jesus handpicked, and Jesus only handpicked 12. He's a guy that walked with Jesus. He's a guy that learned from Jesus. He's a guy that had meals with Jesus. He's a guy that not only saw Jesus do miracles, like had a front row seat to seeing Jesus do miracles, he would have even participated in some of the miracles. Like when Jesus fed the thousands, he gave the food to the disciples to go and distribute it. And it was when the disciples were out there distributing that this food never run out. So this is Judas. Which makes what he did almost completely unbelievable. That he would commit to handing Jesus over to the authorities. And not only that, but he was willing to do it for 30 pieces of silver, which, if you don't have a reference point for that, here's the bottom line. 30 pieces of silver in that time was about the average price of a slave. If you wanted to purchase a slave, it was going to cost you right around 30 pieces of silver. That is literally as low as Judas was willing to go, because Jesus was no longer meeting his expectations. Judas still had a problem himself, though. He had to get Jesus away from the other disciples, from the crowds and so on and so forth. So Matthew records, from then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. So now they're at what we now call the Last Supper, that was the Passover meal for them. And Jesus said that at the end of the meal, he was going to go to the Garden of Gethsemane and he was going to pray. And Judas thought, bingo, that's when I'm going to do it. That's my opportunity. That's the moment Jesus is going to be isolated, and I can seize that moment to hand him over to the Jewish authorities in private. But, that hadn't come, and Judas was still stuck in the room having this Passover meal. Jesus said, very truly I tell you, one of you is going to betray me. And so, again, we've seen this in movies and pictures. The disciples are looking at each other like, what? Huh? Who? What? What are you talking about, Jesus? And so Jesus told Judas, what you're about to do quickly. If you aren't familiar with Jesus' purpose of coming to earth, then this makes no sense. Because why would Jesus not only not resist Judas betraying him, but actually green light it? Of course, no one at the meal understood why Jesus said this to Judas. And when he was gone, Jesus said, now the Son of Man is glorified and God is glorified in him. Again, even at this moment, only Jesus knew the plan, and Jesus knew that everything was going according to plan. So early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans how to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to the Roman governor, a guy named Pilate. And Judas, it's almost like he may not have thought Jesus was going to actually be put to death. He might have thought Jesus was going to be punished, maybe put in prison for a while, but now he's seeing the events unfold, that Jesus is being prosecuted and sentenced to death, and he's not even resisting. And Judas was one of the key reasons this was now happening. So Matthew records when Judas, who had betrayed Jesus, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders. Now Judas starts to see the contrast. I thought 30 pieces of silver was worth something, but now I see that 30 pieces of silver is worth nothing. And I've given up the one who has meant everything for something that now means nothing. And I just wonder if you've ever done this. I know I've done this. I've made some very poor choices in my life that go directly against what Jesus holds as important and valuable. And friends, that's the ticket, the fast train to regrets. Judas knew this. He now had this instant remorse, this instant regret. And he said to the high priest as he's trying to hand back the 30 pieces of silver, I have sinned, for I have betrayed innocent blood. And they said to him, what's that to us? That's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left and went away and hung himself. When we make decisions and choices and do things that go against Jesus' best for us, in that moment, we're responsible for the outcome. In fact, let me go back to the opening question and say it this way. When we barter rather than surrender, we are responsible for the outcome. But by contrast, when we surrender, God takes responsibility for the outcome, which is kind of like, why wouldn't you want that? That is a far less stressful, pressure-filled way to go when God himself, God says, if you do what I want you to do, I'm going to take responsibility for the outcome. But if you only do what you want to do, if you're about just fulfilling your expectations and asking the question, what's in it for me? What about me? Well, then you're responsible for the outcome. So just as we land this, and as we run into Easter and looking through the lens of Judas, who asked the wrong questions, my friend. He's asking the question, he lived with the question, what's in it for me? And yet could have been asking a better question. How can my life be used by Jesus for greater glory and greater purposes? So is there any area in your life right now where you've yet to surrender? Is it in your career? Maybe God's got something different and you have to pivot and maybe do some hard work and heavy lifting to get there, but God's got something on the other side of that. Is it a relationship that you need to step away from or you need to invest more into? Is it your money management? Spend less over here, give more over there. Time priorities? Is it addictive behavior? Is it even just the words you speak? Are you choosing to speak life, which would be Jesus' best plan for you? Or are you the gossip, the one that's pulling people down, the critic? Is there an area, final question, repeat it for us, in your life that you're trying to barter rather than surrender? And how about as we run up to this Easter, lay it down. Say, Jesus, not my will, but your will. Hey, well, that's it for our mini-series, The Bad Boys of Easter. And next week is Easter weekend. We will have an online experience on Easter Sunday, so you can join that live. And here's what I would encourage you to do. Host a watch party. Scoop up some family and friends and colleagues and neighbors. Sit them in your living room. Put us on your big screen TV and join in for Easter with Elevate together and just allow God to really do something special in us then. All right, one more thing before we go. If you've been giving to allow us to do what we do, to reach more people and build more people, then fantastic. Thank you. Well done. Keep going. If you've yet to take that first step when it comes to giving, you can do that. If you're in Australia, you can do that using a bank direct transfer. The details are on our website under the Give section. Or you can use our app, which if you use our app, you can use a debit card or a credit card from anywhere in the world. So to get our app, just go to your App Store, Play Store, search for Elevate Church AU. You will be there. All right, have a terrific week, Easter week, Holy Week, some churches call it, and we look forward to seeing you next week for Easter with Elevate.